I can't imagine what it was like for Jesus to serve his disciples and wash their feet. His humanity and his deity, and the way he made a choice to even serve the person that was going to sell him out. And a lot of times we want to serve the people that like us.
Right.
All right? Or we justify our behavior because somebody was bad to us, so we have a right. No, I have the responsibility how I treat that person, no matter how they're acting.
Hey guys, welcome to TroyGramling.com, episode number 56, February the 29th. Now, I don't know when you're watching it, but if you're watching it on February 29th, yesterday was my birthday. And I'm not sure you sent me a gift. But it's never too late. I do accept belated birthday gifts. Anyways, I am so glad that you've decided to tune in today, whether you're watching the video version on YouTube or Rumble, as well as all the audio versions on all the different podcast apps and platforms. I'm glad you're here. And our goal is really to talk to as many different people as we can so that we can learn from them and learn how to become who God's created us to be, how to live, you might say, as Joel Osteen wrote years ago, our best life now. And today is no exception. Today I have with me a friend, somebody that I respect and have honor for, Dr. James Davis. It's good to have you.
Well, happy birthday, Pastor Troy. I mean, I'll send my belated gift to you along with everybody else.
It's my gift out in the car?
Yeah, it's on its way.
That's what they always
Happy birthday.
Always say.
Yeah, they do.
Well, it's good to have you.
It's an honor to be here.
Why don't you take a moment, just tell us a little bit about yourself, about your family, and we'll go from there.
Sure. You know, I have an identical twin brother and also have four wonderful three daughters and a son. And we've been getting ready, Starla and I are getting ready to celebrate our 35th wedding anniversary. And so we're really excited. We're just a few weeks away from that. And it's just really great to be involved in ministry and to help others' dreams come true.
So you got a twin brother.
I do.
All right. So we're going to put you and your brother. What's your brother's name?
James.
Really?
It is.
Really?
Yes.
So,
really.
Jay, what's your full name?
James Leonard Davis.
And his?
I can't say his middle name because it's that bad.
All right. So James Leonard and James.
Yes.
But anyways, we're going to put their pictures up on the screen. Do they look alike? Do they look like twins? That's what we really want to know. What do you think? Most people are going to think you guys look just alike?
Yeah. Well, they're going to think we look alike. But whether we look identical, who knows? But we are, and we think very similar in a lot of ways. We're very close.
What was it like? I can't imagine growing up with a twin.
Well, if you can imagine that when my mother found out she was having twins, when she didn't know, she already decided on naming one after a grandfather to honor her father. But when they discovered they were twin boys, they had to honor both grandfathers, and both of their names are James. Okay. So that's the way that whole deal came together.
I don't think I've ever heard that.
Yeah. So can you imagine when we're having a son, and I'm thinking, you know what, Starla, I know what I want to do, and she said, we are not naming him James.
So what'd your mom call you? How'd she differentiate you?
Well, she called me Lenny from Leonard growing up. Okay. Or sometimes just the smart one versus my brother. Sometimes maybe it's that. But no, but we had our nicknames growing up. And of course, my brother had Jimmy.
Wow.
Yeah, that's a complicated world.
I thought, I have a cousin. My name's Troy Dean Gramling, and I have a cousin when we were living in Arkansas who's a few years older than me. His name is Troy Dean Gramling. So, and he went to ASU, and then after I hurt my back and all that stuff, I went to ASU. And when I graduated, when I registered, and they said, well, you can't register. You've already graduated.
Right.
Because he was a few years older than me. And I said, well, if you'll give me a copy of my diploma, I'll just be gone.
Be fine. So if you can imagine, like if I have a doctor's appointment or something, and if my brother has a similar doctor that I have to make it really clear to them which one's in the record, because they could pull up the wrong one. So like we went to school together, and he would go to class sometimes for me, and sometimes I'd go to class for him. And
here's the real question.
Yeah.
Did you ever go out on a date for him?
No, but I did date some people that he dated. Yeah, but it wasn't sisters and it wasn't twin sisters. Okay.
Oh, me. I don't think I mean, I knew you had a twin brother, but I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't know y'all. I don't think I realized, or maybe just didn't register that y'all had the same
Yeah.
name.
Same name. And when we go to, it happens, Pastor Troy. The other day I was in the airport and somebody came up and started talking to me, and I knew they were thinking my brother. And they said, well, listen, we'd love for you to come back and speak and all that. And I used to say to people, it's not who you think. I finally just say, love to come back. And I just move on because he's traveled so much more than I have around the world.
And they probably wouldn't believe, because you guys do look a lot alike.
We do.
Now, what does he do?
He's in full-time ministry in church world as well as full-time evangelist. He's spoken in almost 200 countries around the world. And I'm really proud of him.
Now, before we get to what you do, in the past, you've been involved in education.
I have.
What's your doctorate in?
In leadership.
In leadership.
Yeah.
And you have been involved in college education and with some of the different universities and stuff. So I wanted to ask you, we hear a lot about the college campuses today and college students and, safe spaces and, freedom of thought, freedom of speaking on different things. And then, of course, with the action that happened in Israel, we had all the Hamas rallies. And a lot of people are, I guess, surprised and confused. As someone who, over decades have been involved in the university system, are you surprised at some of the radicalness that we see amongst college students, or did you see it moving in that direction early on? I know you've been involved in a lot of Christian education. Is it different? What are some of your perspectives on what we see?
That's a really great question. Thank you for asking. I think it has changed, but I'm going to use a small example. You're probably familiar with Tom's Shoes, right?
Yeah.
And I was out in LA for a meeting, and a friend of mine named Erwin said, I want to introduce you to the founder and CEO of Tom's Shoes. And we're sitting in this, kind of a dive of a restaurant. And I'm waiting. There's some other guys, and I'm waiting for, him show up. So we're all just kind of talking, not realizing he's there. All right. And then Erwin introduced and said, hey, this is the CEO of founder of Tom's Shoes. And so we started talking about that in the context of a college campus, because we had several thousand students on campus. And we had the idea that day around lunch to do a day without shoes at the school. And then the next day, everybody wear Tom's shoes so that a pair of shoes could be given away. And we loved that model. And so we launched that, which became the first of many that Tom's Shoes did across the campus, across America, with colleges going a day without shoes. But what we discovered was something that was so simple and missional became very confusing, and we found professors upset. We found people because it was a change, and it was, kids showing up in classroom in bare feet, and the next day wearing shoes, and then a box being sent, overseas. And we discovered that it was just, a lot of it was just communication. But back then, we all know versus today, it doesn't take much because of social media to explode issues.
Right.
That if back then, if there would have been all this social media hype now that we have, it would have been totally different. But everything is compounded on it. And then, when you see the reaction of students, that I think that they don't understand, a lot of them don't even understand really what's going on.
Right.
That they've seen things from online and media that's given a perception, but what reality is in Israel is different. I've had the privilege to go there over a dozen times, and we did a school there, but the climate is explosive now versus what it was, and it's unfortunate.
I think a lot of times the college students get the blame, but we forget what experience gives you.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like what what you don't know.
Right.
You know, and all the, there's so much, like there's certain things we know, just, and not because we're super smart, but because we've been alive for a while. Right. So, you know, you can't trust everything you read. You know that even people in high position can lie, right? You know, all these things. So you're going to question things. I guess, to me, it's always harder to understand how the adults, how the campus leadership and the professors and the administration, how they allow themselves sometimes to be swayed so much to one side or the other. You know, where the college students so many times are going to believe whatever because they've yet to have that experience. Right. You know, it's like that old, I know probably nobody listening or watching knows the reference I'm about to make, but the Andy Griffith show, I think it was Barney or Andy one who said, "Fool me once," you know, or I think it's Gomer Pyle.
It was Gomer Pyle.
Fool me once, you know, shame on me. Fool me twice, shame on you, kind of. You know, in other words, I ought to learn from my experience. And I think that's what amazes me more on the college campuses than anything. It's not so much, you know, because students are looking for something to give their life to, something with meaning, you know, something to get out of the dorm, you know, and do something with purpose.
And experience does teach us things, and versus just saying, well, this must be real. And unfortunately, so much that we see and read is just not really real. And that's what's created a lot of confusion. And also, I think when there's chaos on a campus, I think it requires strong leadership, and that somebody with a servant leadership towel comes along to help guide people in a way for them to have understanding. I think that's important.
Yeah. And so it ends in productive too. You know, even in your example about Tom's shoes, it would have been one thing to have gone a day without shoes, if not the next day you had purchased the shoes so that then the other pair goes to someone in need. And so it's that action, you know, it's not enough just to raise a bunch of noise. That's great and wonderful. But if it doesn't bring about some kind of transformation or change, we really haven't accomplished a whole lot.
Plus, especially positive change, you know, doing good in the world instead of just getting upset because I'm upset, but where's the good out of it?
And, you know, we this whole idea of cancel culture and everything has almost made speaking courage. In other words, you have to be courageous to speak the truth.
Yes.
And that's true, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be change. Right. In other words, you and I can sit here and talk, and if I say a few controversial things that I believe are true, I can get up and leave and think, man, I really did something. But I guess, you know, and it's good that you speak the truth, but at the end of the day, does that help the hungry you're trying to help, or shoes, you know, in other words, you got to go buy the shoes, or you got to take the food at the end of the day. And so sometimes I think this whole battle over cancel culture and being able to, you know, freedom of speech and all those kind of things actually keep us from doing that which is good.
Right. And I think if we're not careful, we confuse motion and action. That I can be moving a certain way, but not really making an action. You know, that a lot of times people just move stuff, but nothing really was accomplished.
Right.
They just were moving things, and there's a difference between motion and action. And I think for positive change on any campus or in any organization, it's understanding that negative behavior does not produce positive. If you want positive, then be a positive leader to produce positive change. Don't think that doing this other is going to produce it.
It's like they say, rearranging the chairs on the deck of the Titan.
Yeah, it's just motion, you know, but there was no action to it.
But it makes you feel good.
It makes you feel good, right? You know, it's like eating better this year, so we're just going to move stuff around on the table, you know. And
that's the way I do it.
I've watched you do that.
All right. Before we get to what I really want to talk to you about, I was going to mention you've had a lot of different roles where you've support roles, or like a lot of people like to call it the second chair, you know, whether it's executive pastor or whether it's the role you had with the president of the university, those kind of things. What have you learned? First of all, what have you learned from that perspective? Because, you know, that's a chair that not everybody can or is willing to sit in. What have you learned from that chair?
Yeah, thank you. I think it's an honor to serve in that chair. I think that those that you choose to be under determines your level of success. So when you choose to be under somebody in authority, that the choice that you make to be under determines your level of success. And what happens is people say, well, I want to get out from under this authority and be my own success. Okay. That's just fantasy because all of us are accountable somewhere. Right. So that if I'm under the authority where God wants me to be, then if I help that person in authority be a success, guess who's going to bless? I'm going to be blessed. My family's going to be blessed. The people that I'm involved in, I believe that's where favor is. I believe that's where influence flows out of, being willing to be under that. So I've just made it a habit over the years, Pastor Troy, that to study the leader, understand the needs, try to anticipate the needs, and to get under and say, hey, I want to help these dreams come true. And I believe this too, that if I'm committed to helping others get up the ladder of success, I'll find myself standing there. I don't have to elbow myself to get up there. Let's help other people get to the top.
Now, is that something that you've learned along the way? Did you struggle with at any time where you maybe especially emotionally or self-worth, where you or did you just feel called to that and step into it and feel secure in that role?
I think part of it, this is what's crazy, I think part of it comes out of being a twin. That somebody has to choose to be second. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. And he's 16 minutes older than me. So he is my older brother. If you don't believe it, ask him and he'll let you know that. Okay. But somebody has to make a choice. If you're going to have a relationship, you're going to serve. And I'm happy to make that choice.
That's good. And I think, the scripture is very clear. We all have roles, and there's not one more important than the other. It's like the body, the hand and the eyes and the feet, they all have to fulfill their role effectively for the body to actually move forward.
Right.
What are some of the mistakes you see people make who sit in that second chair?
I think, great question. I think sometimes people, when they're sitting there, to go, am I really making a difference? Another mistake is, do people really appreciate what I'm doing? That type of thing. People don't thank me enough. And if you really get down to that, that's our own ego and our own insecurities of that feel important. But I found that if you're in that situation, then you really don't ever want to be the number one, because you getting the number one, you're a lot lonelier than you are in number two. There's no question about that. I think that people make those little mistakes and they don't think it's big, but it is big in the heart that's going to come out in the behavior.
Right. Every position has its benefits. It has its challenges. It has its opportunities.
Right.
And I remember growing up, Mel Poe was our pastor, Brother Mel. And if I heard it a million times, there's no place more fulfilling than being in the center of God's will.
Right.
And that's where the peace and the purpose and the joy is. And, I know in my own life, fulfilling different roles, and being, even because no matter what ultimately position God has you in, there are some of us who might feel called to a certain role for life. And then there's some for a season. When Steph and I came here, I didn't come to be the lead pastor.
Right.
I've had different roles.
You were in the parking lot, right?
Yeah.
You're in a spot in the parking lot, taking care of small things, making people are taken care of, first impressions and all. But when we're faithful in the little things, we are rewarded with much. The problem is, in our society today, we want the much without the little, instead of the little producing much. It's like compound interest.
Right.
It's sowing there that's going to produce enormous things in our life, but it's willing to do the first things first, willing to pull a chair out for somebody, be willing to let somebody else walk in first before you, be willing to, when you're on a bus somewhere and you see that somebody needs money, be willing to give it to them.
And I think we become better leaders simply by a willingness to fulfill those different roles. In other words, when I would have loved at the time not to have been in the parking lot.
Right.
But I learned so much when I first came here that have helped me be effective since I've been here, serving other pastors, like Pastor Joel has helped me to be a better leader. Right. So there's so much that we learn through the different roles that we have to prepare us for whatever God, has for us in the future as well. And I think it's hard to be a good leader if you're unwilling to, because, when you're serving somebody, you get a firsthand view of your ego.
Yes, you do.
You can look in the mirror when you're the leader, but it's a lot more difficult. When somebody asks you to serve them, then it's in that moment you really, what's my response?
Right. That's right.
With an opportunity to serve my wife, the opportunity to serve my kids, opportunity to serve the congregation, right? Anytime there's an opportunity to serve, it's like, okay, am I?
Yes. Because
we've all been in those positions where we felt awkward or we've seen somebody respond like I'm beyond that, in other words, and sometimes it's because, it's the skin naturally does that.
Of course.
But I think that's an important, I would have hated to have missed that opportunity.
Of course. And when we have the opportunities to serve, and if we don't feel the prompting and we don't do it, it affects us inside. And that those opportunities, I can't imagine what it was like for Jesus to serve his disciples and wash their feet, his humanity and his deity, and the way he made a choice to even serve the person that was going to sell him out. Mm-hmm. And a lot of times we want to serve the people that like us.
Right.
All right. Or we justify our behavior because somebody was bad to us, so we have a right. No, I'm responsible for how I treat people, no matter how they treat me, whether my driving and somebody just really gets upset. I have the responsibility how I treat that person, no matter how they're acting. And that's hard for us.
Yeah. I think that when I think about what Jesus said, I think about serving something greater than ourselves.
Right.
Is motivation for even as we serve one another, because it's bigger. Well, with the time we have left, I want to talk a little bit. I know something that you've been incredibly effective with, and I think can help a lot of folks who are listening today, is just relational leadership. Relationships and connecting. And so tell us a little bit about what you've learned along the way and how we can implement that in our own lives.
No, I just think that leadership is all of, we all hear people say, well, leadership is influence. I think it's more than that. But I think relational leadership about caring for the person, for who they are and helping meet their needs and be thoughtful and intentional, whether you ever get anything in return is what matters. And that, because you remember years ago, Stephen Covey, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talked about the emotional bank account. We all have it. You and I have an emotional bank account between each other. There's times I'm able to give deposits, and there's times I'm taking withdrawals. And the thing is that that's happening in all of our lives. And so I want to be a depositor, because I know there's going to be withdrawals. Same with our marriages, with our kids. Man, if we just deposit, encourage and love and affirm, boy, you know what? You'll get on the birthday list. You'll get on, what I'm talking about. It's just that when you choose to do that. So here's a lot of times what people, let's say in organizations that they're serving, they're involved in a boss situation, supervisor. A lot of times they say, well, I'm not going to drop him or her a card or anything like that. It's their birthday, their anniversary, because it might be awkward or funny or whatever. Do it anyway. Just be thoughtful, because you'll be surprised how many don't even acknowledge it or do anything like that. So over the years, I've just put on my phone, the people's birthdays, and they're coming up. Otherwise, I'm not going to remember them.
Right.
And drop a card in the mail. It's better than just a text. Do something personable, be intentional about it, and then you can be a counselor to people like that need help because they trust you. And it's about intentionality in doing that.
How do you differentiate between manipulation and, relational leadership. Putting something in their bucket or however you want it. But how do you differentiate between those two?
That's really great because that comes back to our motivation, our love for the person, and that you just have to know that I'm doing this whether they do anything or not. And here's this mistake a lot of people make. When you don't hear back, they say, well, they didn't thank me or what. That doesn't matter. I've done that for years for people, that I'll just drop something in the mail and that I would have heard something about their life or whatever, and drop a card, drop a gift. Could be a special gift or just of an occasion or whatever. I just think that those things mean a lot. But at the end of the day, if you do it unto the Lord and you do it for the right reasons, you won't have the manipulation in there because you're genuinely doing it because you care about them, not about what you're going to get out of it. But you do this all the time at the church. You're always preaching, teaching, investing in people, whether you ever hear from them. I mean, if I was to ask you how many times every week on Monday you get thank yous and all that, oh my, if your cell phone or what blew off because, whoa, that was the best message, you go, what was wrong with my people, right? But that's just, people need that. We all need it.
Now, as our society's gotten more cynical, have you experienced where your act of kindness is almost seen as manipulation, where you get accused of something that, because people have been burnt so many times that they almost respond negatively to an act of kindness?
Well, first, it's always private. I don't never say anything about it, because that could be form a picture of a manipulation. You know what I mean? But I think that when we're in an organization, whether it's above and just like the middle stars and everybody that's involved, I think that the time of being able to build relations, like for example, I think people in leadership ought to know who their children are. I mean, what's going on in their life, not just what they're producing for the organization, but I think the leader ought to know their people and be intentional about that. And at the end of the day, I just think that that's where you really can build your influence and make a difference in people's lives that you never. Let me just say this because we're running out of time, I'm sure. But I remember one time I felt prompted. This girl was 16 years of age and she sang in the church and she was just absolutely incredible. I went and got a card in my office at the church where I was executive pastor, sat down and wrote this card out to her. And I said, you're going to travel all over the world. God is going to use you in so many ways, your talents, your gifts, Dropped it in the mail, thought nothing about it. 5 or 6 years later, she's in part of this huge choir traveling all over the world. And she was at our church in another state. And she comes up and says, Pastor James, do you remember me? I said, yes, I know exactly. She said, and she opens her Bible and there's the card. And she said, I've taken it with me everywhere that I've gone. And it's just the power of that.
Yeah, Steph and I were on our way to the mall.
Yeah.
I like to shop. But anyways, we were on our way to the mall and the car in front of us flipped over.
Oh.
And it was horrific. We pulled over and I go up and I'm thinking, these people are going to be dead.
Right.
Miraculously, they were okay.
Praise
but the
God.
person who had created it because they sped over and created all this mess, was over the side of the road. And, of course, they felt horrible. And so I go over there and as I'm walking over there, the lady recognizes me.
Yes.
And she recognized me from TV. And then she opened her wallet and she had an invite card in there. And so it allowed me the opportunity to encourage her and let her know, she didn't mean for this to happen. She was on her way for a job interview. She'd been out of work for a long time. But that card she had hung on to because of an invite she had got and a service she had been to. And so it is, there is incredible power when we value relationships beyond the project or if anybody ever goes to my office and you're invited, I have this big lighted sign and I got it from John Wooden, greatest basketball coach probably that's ever lived, won more at least national championships at UCLA. And what he said you can use young men to build a great basketball team, or you can use basketball to build strong, great men. And, he had Bill Walton and Lou Alcindor, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, all those folks played there.
That's right.
And I just changed it to ministry, that you can use people to build a great ministry in the sense of it's big, it's impactful, it's, got money, all that stuff. Or you can use the ministry. You can use, parking cars and teaching children and singing and all that to build great people.
Yes.
But you have to be intentional because, in the skin and you don't have to be, we like to make people good and bad, but you don't have to be this evil person to manipulate or to use somebody. Right. Because I can misuse you trying to accomplish something. Somebody out there in the stands has their alarm on. But anyways, I can have something of value to do, but use you to get it done.
Right.
And that can get confusing, as opposed to stepping back and saying, no, I'm gonna pour into you and accomplish the project at the same time. Right. But that takes, more intentionality and patience.
And to your point like that I want to say that in leadership, we need to be careful not to allow the digitalization of the world, of humanity, to keep us from the personalization of touching people. And that's going to be the challenge as we move forward with AI and everything else, is that we will want to digitalize, and digitalization is not a personal touch. Allow our personalization to always be felt instead of the digitalization of ourselves. It's important.
So the effort that it takes to encourage is important.
It is.
And, not just pushing a button and
right.
AI sending it.
That's right.
Let me ask you, last question.
Very good.
Last question. I'll put you on the spot. As you look back over your life, a few decades, what is the most encouraging thing you can remember someone doing for you?
There's so many. Sorry.
That's all right. I told you I was going to put you on the spot.
The faithfulness of my family is how I'm so grateful that they're so good to me. And I'm so blessed to have a family that truly, truly cares about James. And I'm grateful for that. And secondly would, of course, be my faith in Jesus. He's always faithful, and he's always so good.
And I think it's important from time to time to recall those things.
Absolutely.
Because life can be so difficult. Sometimes we stay focused on all the unfair things, or the people who forgot us, or the knives in the back.
Right.
And no matter who you are, take some time to think about whether it's just somebody letting you in traffic today. You know, it took effort on their part. Not their skin wanted to be first, but for whatever reason they said, go ahead. And that's because you got value. And that's always our heart's desire. So Dr. James, thanks for being here today.
Happy to be here. Thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing your wisdom. Thank you for partnering with us and all the things we do here at Potential Church as well.
Thank you, Pastor Troy.
And I am so glad that you guys were here today as well. I hope you've been encouraged, and again, if you're here for the very first time, I want to encourage you, go back and get some of the other episodes, because we've talked to all kinds of different people. That's what I've enjoyed so much. I mean, we've talked to professional athletes. We've talked to professional chefs. We've talked to, I can't even think about architects and jewelers and radio personnel. I mean, we just talked to everybody, and it's amazing. They all have something to say. and something that matters and something that we can all learn to. So if you've yet to check out past episodes, let me encourage you to do that. Also, it'd be a huge help to me if you just subscribe and share. You know, our goal, I shared with you in the past, our goal is simply to partner with people so that they can become what God's created them to be, so they can reach their potential. And we want to do that for you and the folks in your life. So if you hit subscribe, we're trying to build this thing. If you share it with somebody, we really, really would appreciate it. Don't forget, we're on all the podcast platforms, and video version is on YouTube and Rumble. Have you ever been to Rumble? It's growing all the time. You might want to check it out. We'll see you guys next Thursday. Be sure and come back. Got somebody special. We're going to talk to them. And I got to remind you, on Sunday nights at 6 a.m., we have a live broadcast. We're going to talk about relationships. Can't beat that, can you? God bless. We'll see you later.